Hey, BookTube! Chelsea, the Reading Outlaw here to do the next installment in my 5-book wrap-up for 2017. This is books 51 through 55. Book number 51 is Without You, There Is No Us, My Time with the Sons of North Korea's Elite by Suki Kim. This is a book that I actually first heard about on the Book Riot podcast because of some shit, basically, some bullshit that went on with the way this book was marketed and how that was kind of indicative of some bigger issues with book marketing and publishing in general. But the book itself sounded super fascinating. Suki Kim went undercover as an English professor at one of the few English speaking universities in North Korea, the People's University of Science and Technology, PUST. And it is her story about pretending to be a missionary and doing this English teaching, but also being an undercover journalist with the sons of the elite of the North Korean regime, which, if you know anything about North Korea is such an insular community and such a country that pays such dogged, cultish allegiance to the Kim family and to the supreme leader, and how what the Korean people believe is so dissonant with how the actual Korean people live and the reality that they put forth and what they want to say. And Suki Kim really gets into all of that and what it's like for these boys to think that North Korea is literally the greatest country in the world and to have no concept of the technological advances in other countries or the good things that places like America and the West have given to the world, in addition to some of the harm that the West has admittedly done. And so Suki Kim just really is a fascinating and brilliant undercover reporter. And the problem was that this book was kind of packaged originally as a memoir, as opposed to a piece of undercover investigatory journalism, which is what it is, and how that gets into a lot of really gendered bullshit that publishing has about things like memoirs and stuff. And so that's what originally got me into the book, but the book itself is fascinating and I really, really recommend picking it up. I listened to it on audio and it flew by, and it is another fascinating look behind the curtain of a country that we don't really know much about and that we're getting more and more from every day as people continue to defect. The next book I finished was actually a graphic novel. This is I Hate Fairyland Volume 2, Fluff My Life by Scotty Young. I love Fairyland. For those of you who haven't been around before, Fairyland is all about Gertrude, and Gertrude is a young girl who actually makes her way into Fairyland one day when she's very young, when she's 6 years old, and all she has to do is find the magic key to open the door to get home, but it takes her 45 years to find it, and so all of a sudden she's a 40-year-old woman stuck in the body of this 6-year-old girl. At the end of the first volume, she kills the Queen of Fairyland, and in the second volume, unfortunately, has to rule. So it's all about her adventures doing that and her continued quest to just try and get home. This comic is so grotesquely, comically violent and vulgar and disgusting, but it does that adult thing where it bleeps the curse words with words like fluff or unicorn or what the cheese, but it's so disgustingly, gorily violent and it's all done in these Technicolor, bright, acid, trippy, hot pink, shamrock green, brilliant color scope. And it's just so visually appealing to me. I love the Fairyland series. I highly, highly recommend that you pick it up if you're looking for an adult, funny, irreverent, really, I think, beautifully drawn graphic novel. Right after that, I went on another little mini graphic novel binge and finished another graphic novel, and that was Plutiona by Jeff Lemire. This is a book about a small town with superheroes when a superhero named Plutiona kind of mysteriously goes missing and 4 local high schoolers find her in the woods. But it's about so much more than that, as most superhero stories are. It's about belonging and adolescence and outgrowing your friends and new romance and wanting to be better than you feel like you are, and legacy and fame. And it gets really dark, and it takes a lot of really dark turns that I thought were really interesting, and it has a couple of really great twists. The art is beautiful. Jeff Lemire does such amazing work in all of his graphic novels. This was just another one that I wanted to pick up. It's a standalone. It's not a series, so you can pick up the whole one volume and read the whole thing, and it just is definitely, it leaves you with a lot to chew on. I'm still kind of working out how I feel about it, but I definitely really enjoyed the reading experience, and it is an absolutely beautiful piece of artwork. The next book that I read is The Revenge by Hannah Jane. I live tweeted this book. This book is a flaming pile of garbage, refuse, like shit burn. I hate this book so much. I will put the storyfy down below of the live tweets that I did, but this book is basically about a guy who decides he's not good enough for his girlfriend, so he breaks up with his girlfriend. And then his girlfriend, in kind of a bitchy way, humiliates him in front of all his friends by reading the love poems he wrote her out loud. So in revenge for doing this, he decides to publicly dox her and like signs her up for all of these revenge porn websites and all of these dating websites and stuff, and then publishes her address and phone number and shit online. And then she maybe gets kidnapped, and he doesn't really feel all that bad about it, but maybe she doesn't get kidnapped because it's also like Gone Girl, and she's like this supposedly unlikable narrator. And like she's not very likable, but that doesn't make what's okay happen to her. But then she also like gets fake abducted, but then real. This book is a fucking mess, you guys. She gets fake abducted, then real abducted, then almost sexually assaulted, but not really, but it's definitely like threatened sexual assault. And then maybe her parents did it. And I don't even know what the fuck this book was. Like I said, I will link the story fight down below if you want to go check all of those live tweets. Bottom line, this book is super dangerous, super harmful, and I would not recommend. And I also recommend that you tell everyone you know who's thinking about picking it up not to. That's The Revenge by Hannah Jane. It's a young adult book that's coming out very, very shortly, or has just recently come out. I'm horrible with ARC dates, but one way or the other, avoid times a million. And then the last book that I'm going to talk about in this book is the polar opposite of that, because I loved it so much. It was so good. It was a podcast read for Sisterhood of the Traveling Paperbacks, and that was The Lawrence Brown Affair by Cat Sebastian. It was so good. It's a male-male romance about Lawrence and about him being kind of this mad scientist who lives, he's kind of a recluse. He reads very heavily as being on the autistic spectrum. He's definitely got some issues with sensory processing disorder and anxiety. And he is just kind of this kind of tragic hero until his secretary shows up to kind of maybe help set his life in order. And his secretary is so kind and respectful and understanding of how he sees the world, and they fall in love. But it's about con men and mistaken identities and mental health and family and becoming family and what that means. And it's so good and it's so wonderful. I cannot wait for you guys to hear the podcast episode about that one. It will not be out yet, but as soon as it's out, I will link it down below. I cannot wait for you guys to listen to it. Please pick it up if you haven't. I am so excited that there are more books in this series by Cat Sebastian, and she has automatically gone on my auto buy list to pick up anything that she has coming out in the future. So I am really, really excited. That's the last book I have in this wrap up. As always, let me know down below which of these you've read, which of these you want to read or are planning on picking up. Come find me all over social media. I'm always here to talk books with you guys. Like, subscribe, come back in a little bit. And until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and have happy reading. Bye.